Dearest gentle listeners, you are listening to the Ladies Bridgerton, the talk of the ton. We are your effervescent hosts, your neighbourhood-friendly Kiwi, Tash from Middle Earth, New Zealand.
And Patty, Regency romance enthusiast, currently riding her high-vibe, sultry siren era.
Ride that boat. Settle down.
Ride what?
Your boat.
That almost was like, inserts himself where? Because I didn't hear what you said, but that's...
Patty's about to go on a cruise, for those wondering about the reference.
Oh, you said ride that boat. Okay.
Ride that boat. Settle down onto your favorite settee as we delve into the lives of the elite and illustrious ladies, lords, and royalty of the ton. This Bridgerton podcast is two friends talking romance, symbolism, Easter eggs, and deep diving into the connections of our favorite characters. We cover both book, TV series, and notable social media, and therefore will contain spoilers.
Tangent Squad. The main dish of episode 4 has been devoured morsel by delectable morsel. Now we move on to the side. Just how poor are those Featherington sisters? Portia's desperation to keep the fraud money seems to be that she is also keeping up her daughter's position in society and their home. Also, did Penelope get the Cinderella treatment? Let's dive in.
For those who are wondering, yes, today I am sick. So if you hear me coughing, I will try my best to pause my mic, but it's been struggle town for the last week.
Yeah, this is probably the last time you were this sick was when we were talking Gravy Boat.
It was 4 months ago. Hopefully this episode doesn't have too many laughs because I will end in fits on the floor.
You say that now.
Don't even.
Challenge accepted.
Oh, honestly, this tubby bubby is pretty sure that she's got a 6-pack going on under these ciabatta rolls, because I have been coughing so much that my abs are aching. Like there is a full-blown like muscular situation going on under this.
My mom coughed so bad once with bronchitis that she broke a rib.
Yeah, Stephen vomited yesterday from coughing so much. Down Struggle Town.
I've done that. I've coughed so bad, but it wasn't vomit. It was phlegm, but it was like he vomited out because it was a lot. I actually had pneumonia at the time. Sorry for the gross.
Now we must make haste into today's episode. So today we are going to be starting out side stories, jumping straight into the Featherington house, because there was actually a lot to unpack in this scene. So episode 4 starts out with the Featherington sisters rushing down the hallway at Featherington house after being summoned by their mother. But even before the scene happens, Patty has a bit of a scoop.
Yes. So even though we talk about the scene starts with the sisters running down the hall, it doesn't. The scene actually starts. The episode starts outside of the Featherington home, and the camera pans in as it does on Featherington house. When it's every scene that's coming into Featherington house, the camera kind of swoops toward it slowly or whatever. So it's like you're walking across the street to Featherington house, right? So I almost feel like those are like Colin point of view kind of things, like how it would look walking across the street to Featherington house. But so as you're swooping into Featherington house, on the left of the screen is a carriage, and you see a man, one driver, that's it, get down from it and walk around. And that gives you the vibe of like a cab, like a hired hack. A hired hack would only have one driver, and that person walks around, and then you see the sisters in the house running down the hall to the drawing room. So I believe that is the carriage that brings the sisters to the house. So we're going to play the here's what we know to come to the conclusion I came to. So here's what we know. The sisters came in one carriage. I looked back. Every other carriage that we see the sisters in or around this year is a Featherington carriage. Yeah. That is not a Featherington carriage. There's no green on the outside. It's like black with red trim on the outside, kind of. And it's a very short, squat carriage. It's not a big, ornate carriage. And the Featherington carriages that they have, that I believe came from the fraud money, or they've already had in the carriage house that they had not used really because of not having the money for the horses and stuff. They're larger, more headroom, and they could actually hold up to 4 people. This carriage looks like it's probably can only hold 2, one on each side, maybe 4 if they're like super skinny. I mean, they would fit with their husbands, but their husbands were not present. But they came together in a carriage that was not a Featherington carriage because the driver was not wearing the Featherington colors. And could it be their carriage? Yes, but it would have to be only one of their households unless we have the sisters and their husbands sharing a flat because of their income being so low. We also know, remember after the garden party, Portia tells them to go home and get to work.
Yes.
Philippa says, can we come to your house for a bit of pudding first? Our cook isn't as good as yours. And she said, well, you shouldn't have married misters.
Yeah.
So she doesn't say her cook and my cook. She says, can we come to your house first? Yes. Our cook. So I think that the sisters and their husbands are sharing a flat because of money. So they're very poor. I think they do not own a carriage or a horse, and they are hiring because she sent Varley, because Prudence says, Varley said it's important.
Do you think, sorry, on this note, thinking back to season 1/2, I think this is the thought that I had that I forgot about, that's the point. Do you think that Finchie's family ever actually received her dowry? Because cousin Jack kept saying, oh yeah, I've given it to you. And he was like, really sneaking around the point. But do you think that he ever actually, I don't think he ever did, but once they received the money from the ton, do you think that he ever actually paid? Because he seems like such a grifter that he's like, well, I'm planning on skipping town anyway, so why would I give out the money when I could just keep it and avoid giving it out?
Here's what I think, because these business contracts are between the family.
Yes.
And the dowry is given normally a dowry is given if you made an advantageous match.
Yes.
The dowry is not needed for the upkeep of the home, and it's put into an allowance for the wife to be done as part of their pin money, or an allowance of some sort that they can use as they wish. But Finch's parents were so desperate for the dowry. I do not think that dowry was getting used towards Finch's household at all, so much as becoming like he's going to have to set up house with his wife. Yeah. Obviously, it's got to be economical. Yeah. They live far enough away from Featherington House that they actually needed to take a carriage there. And we know they don't have telephones and things. So Varley either sent a note or Varley went herself to the house. But Prudence was sleeping when she came, which means Varley was not going to wait. So they had to hire a hack to come to the house. And so I think they're sharing. And I honestly think Finch and Philippa, as much as they were in season 2, after they got married, I don't think they were able to set up house. I think they were staying in the home.
Well, that's what I was kind of thinking when I said, like, I don't think cousin Jack ever gave them a dowry. I think the parents were wanting the dowry so that they could set up.
They needed it for themselves.
I don't think it worked that way. I think it was given to the man that was taking the wife on, and that was like his startup operating cost of having that wife.
Yeah, but not for a mister. The Lord's family would negotiate the business deal. The dowry went into the family money.
Yeah, but what I'm saying
is normally designated for that household, but the family was so desperate for that money, I think they lessened the amount of it that they would give them to set up a separate house.
Well, what I was wondering is they didn't seem to set up a separate house in season 2, and I wonder whether that's also part of why Finchie didn't create an heir in season 2 at all for an entire year. And I wonder whether it's partly because, if he, depending on the house and how it was set up, because they weren't affluent.
All the family quarters were on the same floor, but
yes,
the sisters quarters were close to each other. Penelope's was off from everyone else. If you look at the way the doors are,
yes,
hers was in the back part of the house.
But I'm saying if Finchie had like a young sister per se, and he's like, oh, well, my wife's living in this house with me. I don't want my sister overhearing that. And so, like,
no, I think Finch came and lived in Featherington House with them.
That would make sense.
Parents, because they were always there. I think the parents kept the money, and I think they were desperate for the money.
I don't think they were ever given it.
They didn't get all of it. They were given some on deposit, he said. I think he gave them a deposit.
No, I don't think he did. I think he pretended to, but I don't think he ever actually did. If you listen to it, he's like, "Oh, I'd
have to go back and hear it again."
Yeah, to be honest, season 2 is my least watched, and I've probably only watched it a few times at most. But from memory, I'm sure I could go find it because I watched it several times before season 3 started. I'm pretty sure he says, "Oh yeah, I've already paid it. It's already cleared," but then he says to Portia that nothing has actually been paid, and he's like just pretending.
I
And
thought he
they're
told
gonna.
Portia that he paid them a deposit with the rest forthcoming, but it probably never did. But
Mm,
he was hoping for an advantageous marriage, because I think it was in that conversation where she got him, caught up in the orangery,
yeah,
and he fully explained the whole situation now.
yeah,
But so I think I think after she got the fraud money, I think she got Prudence married, and she set them up shop somewhere, and she's giving them their allowances based on their dowries. Like, she went with what their dowries were,
yeah.
kind of, but she's providing face for them in society, because they married misters.
Yes.
And yes, they could still
Well,
come to balls and everything,
because
but
her
they
daughters
would
are
not
still
be.
a reflection of her, and
Yes.
she's so
Narcissistic.
egotistical. Yes, same,
Yes.
same, 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 same. Tomato,
Same,
tomato.
same.
She's so egotistical that her daughter's looking badly is a poor reflection upon her. So she's not only
Yeah.
bankrolling her own household, but she's also bankrolling another. And I don't think she could afford to bankroll three, even if it was just, even if it was just like the Mondrick family of just like a 1 bedroom kind of a shack. I mean,
Yeah.
their original house, not the estate, obviously.
Right.
I don't think that they could afford that kind of thing at all. So I think that yeah, she set them up with a house and housekeepers and all the rest of it. But
Well, I mean,
only
not all the rest
only
of it. I think they have simply like they have a cook.
they have
They
a cook
probably
and a
have one
housekeeper.
housekeeper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she allows them to use the family
The,
carriage often
she allows them to use a family carriage when they're going to a
to
societal
events where it
function.
will be seen
That's
that they're not. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the only time I see them getting in and out of Featherington carriages is at
Yeah.
societal functions. We
Because
only see it the one time at the
she needs
garden
to
party.
maintain appearances, not
Yes.
you know.
Well, not just that, because she doesn't want anyone to figure out that she's involved in the fraud and everything.
Yeah.
And she wants to elevate all of her daughters in society. So
Yes.
she's keeping up an elevation that doesn't match their income, because she's told people what their dowries probably were by putting down Marina's dowry in the first season at being 4 figures.
Mhm.
She's making it sound like they had more dowries than they did, but he gambled them all away. So
Yes.
I think she's keeping up appearances to make it look like the daughters had bigger dowries than they did, but they're really living in a flat outside of Mayfair.
Portia was really pressed for the fact that she was just a baroness. I think she really, really like. I think it's a very big portion of why she resents Violet so much is because Violet is, to be fair, she is only one step above. But even though she is only, she was the wife.
They're nine generations deep.
They're 9 generations deep. Yeah, and it does garner, and obviously their wealth reflects being 9 generations deep. And it's not just 9 generations deep; it's 9 generations deep of men who are so duty bound. Like we can even see it in the way that Lord Ledger, who wasn't obviously a Bridgerton, but like you can see the same duty bound, the same really loving husbands. Although Edmund's father, I don't believe was. I think Edmund's father was quite.
I'm reading that book right now.
Oh, true. I think Edmund's father was quite sleepy, hands off, like not very. He's definitely what's the dad from Pride and Prejudice?
I'm reading sort of. They're definitely a country family.
Yeah.
And when they had Billy is 9 years older than her oldest next sibling, because there were two miscarriages, lost children. So her father started raising her like a son.
Yeah.
And she learned the estate. She learned how to manage the estate. So, and I know you haven't seen Downton Abbey, but she's more like Mary from Downton Abbey, because
Billy's
he
personality
only had
is Anthony.
daughters.
Billy's personality is Anthony. Billy and George together are Anthony.
I think Billy is Eloise, and I truly think that
Eloise isn't that strong though. Like she's Eloise is a little bit like Theo says, she is a society girl.
Would have been
Yes.
Eloise would have been that strong if she would have been allowed to be raised like a boy, like Billy was.
Yeah.
And I think that Edmund probably withheld a lot of that from Eloise, because he saw Billy in her and was like, Billy had such a hard time on the marriage mart. I'm just now like, I've heard the stories of how she set fire to somebody's dress at her debut.
Yes.
And she never had a season because her mother was afraid that was going to be a stigma on her.
Mm-hmm.
So she never got a season. Nobody ever pushed it. She's technically very close
Yes.
to spinsterhood in her book. She's 24 or 25 years old. Like she's older. She's definitely older than Colin in the show when Colin gets married.
Yes. Yeah. I'm just gonna pause for 1 second.
You cut me off. I got to remember that.
Sorry, you were talking about Billy not being on the season.
Yeah,
and
so
how Eloise.
I think Billy has the temperament and personality of Eloise, and I think we see why Edmund. Because I was wondering as I was reading it, or as I was listening to it, I was like, "This is Eloise. It's like Eloise from the show.
Yes.
Like, why would Edmund not allow her to learn fencing? Why would Edmund not allow her to do some of these boy
how
things?
Was she when how old was she when Edmund died? Because
we don't know she knows how to shoot yet.
She was what 11 when Edmund died?
No, because we determined Colin was 12, which would have put Daphne at 11, which would put Eloise at 9 or 10.
Yeah, okay. We'll say 9.
And I think Eloise is a little bit younger than Penelope, so I think and we said Penelope was probably about 10 at that time. Mm-hmm. So if she's 2 to 3 years younger than Colin, so she would have been 9 or 10. So that puts Eloise at 8 or 9. Like I'd say 9. 8 and 10.
Yeah. I'd say we'll go 9. It's my favorite number.
But she did learn. Edmund taught her how to shoot, so that's really young to learn how to shoot.
I think
we don't know that yet till they get to her story.
I think he was raising her. Keep it in. I think he was raising her that way, but then she died at. I mean, he died at such a young age that then Violet
and she didn't meet Penelope till after, so it probably was Antony who said she couldn't fence.
Well, no, I don't think it was. I think it was what's the housekeeper's name?
Mrs. Wilson?
Mrs. Wilson. I think it was Mrs. Wilson because she did the raising from then on. She was the matriarch of the family.
No, they had governesses.
Well, okay. Well, the governess then. I think that it was the governess that was like, no, this is you are a female. And I think it was Violet was off doing her own thing in her depression.
Mrs. Wilson seems to have a very close relationship with those kids that she can laugh right in Eloise's face. Yes. So I think she would have been indulgent, and you can see how she is with Colin.
I think she's also quite strict. I think when it comes to children, she would be very strict, and this is the proper way to do things. You are a young miss. You are not going to be fencing. You are going to be doing your French lesson. I mean, not that she did them very well, clearly.
Well, yes and no, because she's not very strict about protocol when it comes to Lord Anderson and Violet. But I think she's been around with Violet since Violet was young. So
yeah,
I think that they're more on a friendly level. Kind of like, again, I'm going to bring up Downton Abbey. The maid for Mary and the girls was very close with Mary, like they were friends.
Yeah, but I mean, my original point is that Portia is incredibly jealous of the fact that this is a family that has generation after generation of very strong, very successful men who have married very strong, very successful women and have bred very strong, very beautiful. They have a strong lineage to them. And because of that, they are well respected in the ton and they can really get away with a lot more than what anyone else could. Do you think that if the Featheringtons pulled half the stuff that the Bridgertons pull, and I mean, granted, they have their own scandals, but I think if the Featheringtons pulled what the Bridgertons would, there would be a lot more consequence for them.
Well, and I think that's the whole lesson, right? Is that your reputation determines just how damaged you come out of a scandal, right?
Yeah.
Like the Featheringtons really struggle because she created a poor reputation from the beginning because she's so vulgar and crass, and Lord Featherington openly gambled, had debts he didn't pay. So because they didn't follow the rules of society from the beginning, they made good appearances and were in general just good people. They didn't create a reputation for themselves that could help them rise above those scandals, whereas the Bridgertons had for generations just been good people. Like even in the book, they described Colin as nice. Violet is kind, brings people into her home to stay, like if we're going to talk about book 4. So they have a good reputation for a reason. And honestly, thinking about it, I'm not sure Portia is so much jealous as she is. She's so desperate to align with them because she wants the stability. She
Well,
wants to be
even in
able to
even
be.
in book 4 of the Rokesby series, when Andrew Rokesby finds out that Poppy is a Bridgerton and that her uncle, her very close uncle, is it wouldn't have been Edmund back then, it was Edmund's dad, but like he was absolutely shitting himself. He's like, oh my God, this is an incredibly influential, powerful family. I'm going to have an entire country's worth of people searching for this girl if anyone knows that she is missing. Like, he's like, this is like the worst person I could have ever accidentally kidnapped.
Ever accidentally kidnapped. Okay, Gregory. Which that wasn't quite an accident.
This one wasn't either. I won't get into it. I'm not going to get into it. Is my favorite book out of all the Rokesby and Bridgerton books, though. Definitely have to read it. Patty and I
Well,
think
I'm really liking Billy and George's right now. And
I really
will
like
say
Billy and George's. Yeah.
just George to me is no longer King
Yes,
George.
for those who
Because
don't know, we had an original Just George well before Queen Charlotte came along.
sorry, granola bar is my snack of choice tonight. He doesn't call himself just George, where King George does.
Yes.
When she's talking about him and she's realizing her feelings for him, she says, even though he's Lord blah blah blah,
Yeah.
it's not Lord Manston, it's something else, but they're the Manstons, that's their last
Yes.
name.
Yeah.
But his last name is something different because he's Lord whatever he is.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember.
No, because
if
it's
he-
Lady
no,
Lady Manston, Lord Rokesby. He's a Rokesby, but it's Lady and Lord Manston. They're Rokesbys.
I'm trying to think of what that one lady when they're playing Pall Mall. But it's not. I don't know.
It's been years since
Anyways,
I read these books. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, when she's like, she always saw him as like arrogant and stuff growing up, but she realizes he's not really arrogant. He just has a quiet confidence. And she's like, he's just George. And like, it also gets said out loud at the Pall Mall thing because this lady that's fawning all over him she calls him Lord something or other.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then Billy calls him George. And she goes, don't you mean Lord blah, blah, blah? And she turns and goes, no, I mean George. He's just George. Yeah. Like she's marking her spot.
I love that she was saying we have a level of connection. I can call him George. You can't. Nah.
Well, and I love, if anybody, seriously, this is my plug to read the Rokesbys because I've put it off, not on purpose, but just the way my Audible credits worked and how busy we were and the stuff I got going on in my life. But like now I have time. So I started reading it and there's so much juice. Like,
oh yeah,
they had to fashion a new Pall Mall set. So we hear about this new Pall Mall set and we learn that they got rid of the red mallet because they could never find the red balls in the lake. And what color did they replace it with? Yellow. And to tell you how detailed Bridgerton the show is, I have a picture of the Pall Mall set because of showing in the group. I did a post about how Colin played Eloise to make sure he would get yellow.
Yeah.
And looking at when they talk about the colors that are in the set, the only color that they don't mention is that mustard one because there's not enough players.
Mm-hmm.
They name off every other color and the one looks brown, but it's faded. They're all faded. And that's the purple mallet.
Mm-hmm.
So, and guess who gets the black mallet? George. And guess who calls it for the first time? The mallet of death.
Yeah.
George Rokesby. That's where that came from. And it's been the mallet of death ever since.
It traveled down the generations. And I love that they put those little tidbits in that we have in the show. I feel like that, and that's the difference. I feel like Chris Van Dusen didn't just read Bridgerton. I feel like he went through and
he read all of it.
He read everything. He devoured it and he put those tidbits. And that's what made it amazing. Those tiny little tidbits.
I think that's how we know, like, he was so into it because Shonda she tells the story in the original podcast that she needed a book for a vacation. She was going on vacation. Yeah. She was at the airport. She decided to pick up a book and she picked up, I don't even know if it was The Duke and I. It might have been The Viscount Who Loved Me, but it was one of those two.
Yeah.
And she read it and she thought it was fabulous. And she came back and she was talking about it. And Chris Van Dusen was like, oh, yes, I love those books.
Yes.
I've been thinking about a way to turn them into a series. And he started pitching it to her. Then they started writing it. And that's how Bridgerton became created. So I think Chris Van Dusen, as already being a fan, had already read the whole universe, because when they sat down to contract negotiations with Julia Quinn, they did not just buy the rights to the Bridgerton family. They bought the rights to the Bridgerverse. Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like it shows, like you can tell that he loves it.
Every time we start talking in this podcast, my nose starts running like a banshee. My nose doesn't run all day long, folks, until we start talking.
Clearly you're allergic to me. Sorry.
Or like the sound of my voice is like vibrating in my sinuses and just making it all run out.
Yeah, I feel like I really, really wish that I mean, it wouldn't change it, but I really wish we knew. I just want Chris Van Dusen back, okay? But like at the same time, if he were mistreating the cast or things like that, then I completely understand why he got phased out. But at the same time, it's really, really hard because I loved him and his work so much because it was so detailed, and you could tell that he was creating it for the book. Like he did fan service for the book fans, but also still kept it relevant.
Having the exact color mallets from the book is straight up a book fan
book service
gold mine. Yes.
Well, so when they say book service, that's when like anime, when they start like creating the animes and that kind of thing, and they start doing it in a way that they know that the fans are dying for this. Book service would be, the carriage scene, those kinds of things are a book service.
But they only gave us moments. They weren't the actual.
But Chris Van Dusen did. Chris Van Dusen gave us
actual scenes from books,
and he gave us the mallets of death from another series that he still incorporated it accurately into it. So he did a lot of book service, and I feel like he did book service while still respecting the story and still making it palatable for those who had never read the books. He managed to fit all of that in, and I mean, I get it. It was incredibly difficult on his family.
I love season 3, but I don't think season 3 was treated to the same care and consideration for book fans that seasons 1 and 2 were. And even though
so many lines,
even though season 2 especially was very much changed from the book in terms of being able to have the inclusivity and the representation, it worked though.
Yeah, I feel like season 3, they had so many lines that they had the lines from the book. There was absolutely zero reason whatsoever to change it, but they changed it for their own. Like, I feel like it was almost like an egotistical, I want to make this my own thing, so I'm going to change it to what I think it should be.
It was very much a rebranding. It gave off, as somebody who works in corporate world and who's lived through a couple of rebranding at different companies I've worked at, this was very much a rebranding. It was a new, we want to go in a certain direction. They're no longer saying it's Regency era. It's now Regency fantasy. Like that's the verbiage they use now in interviews. It's Regency fantasy because it's not sticking to the rules.
So speaking of that, I watched a season, I think I talked about this really, really early on in the pod. I used to watch a TV series called Glow Up, and it is a makeup artistry. It's basically America's Next Top Model, except makeup artist edition. And one of their challenge episodes was going onto the set of Bridgerton, and they had to create looks for the backup, what do you call them? The extras. And they had to keep it. So one of the things that they were looking at was creating a flawless base, because obviously your base was everything back then, because you didn't have these crazy makeup looks. It was all very natural, had to stay Regency appropriate. So back then, in season 1 when they were filming, and season 2 and in the very, very early, I think this episode that they were filming for was very early on in season 2 when Chris Van Dusen was still, because I'm pretty sure, I feel like he might have been in this episode. I can't remember exactly, but they talked very specifically about hair, makeup. Everything had to be Regency. If you were trying to make someone stand out, they're not supposed to stand out. These are meant to be extras. They are supposed to blend in. Everything is meant to be flawless base, very simple makeup. You can't do today's makeup. Season 3, they were like, let's just throw all of what we have discussed out the window and just do whatever we want. We just want pretty looks, screw the fact that, so they set up certain things in season 1 and 2, which is what we came to expect. If they started out of saying, hey, this is fantasy, we're not going to keep it Regency at all, but they didn't. Season 1, they kept it at least somewhat accurate, and then season
I love that I love that with including the spicy stuff, which human beings do, right? Like Anthony pounding Sienna into a tree
Mm-hmm.
is very much like something a human being would do, right?
Yes.
Given the opportunity.
I mean,
So, and that's what made Bridgerton so controversial for Regency, was that they were showing these scenes that in regular Regency literature that turned into movies, that was not depicted because you weren't allowed to talk about sexuality. You weren't,
yeah,
it was faux pas. You were not allowed to talk
it
pregnancy. It
happened.
was
You just
faux
didn't
pas.
talk about it.
Yes, it was very much private, very much secret. And they were turning that on its head. I loved it for that. But this whole, like this season, although Penelope was beautiful, Nicola Coughlan as Penelope was beautiful. I loved the dress looks. I did love the makeup. It just wasn't Regency.
Yeah. It is absolutely breathtakingly beautiful. But that was one of the things I was going to talk about is I was rewatching so I'm rewatching season 1 with my husband at the moment, and we get up to the scene where Marina has just decided that she is going to go after Colin, and she's like gushing all over about Colin to Penelope, and she's in that same sort of nightdress, and I'm like, how did we not pick up just how breathtakingly beautiful? She's got her lovely décolletage, like she's got the whole thing going for her. But I think we were so wound up in the scene of her being like distraught over the fact that Marina is now courting Colin.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very much Marina
about
courting
that scene,
Colin.
and what's important about that nightgown is, and that is a cognitive dissonance to the words that Marina uses later when she says Colin only views you like a little sister. He views you like a child, where he views me as a woman.
And her body is like woman.
Yeah, she looks more of a grown voluptuous woman than Marina does, and Marina's a pregnant woman.
Yeah,
like where's your pregnancy breast?
Yeah,
like you should be having issues with your frock, chickadee,
yes.
and you're not.
Yeah.
So Penelope looks more like a woman than she does, and she's putting her down like he still views you as a child. No, he doesn't. He can't. There's two very big things in her front that he cannot avoid looking at. I mean, you just watch this dude, even the What a Barb scene. If you watch his line of sight, he is standing over her from the back. He's glancing.
Well, and he's so tall that that's the only place he can look.
I know. That boy cannot look like, and I clocked the whole thing when he walks in at the beginning of season 2 to Lady Danbury's house to that soiree. Like, he does that little curtsy to her.
Yes.
He only goes down far enough to breast and then back up. He doesn't go all the way down.
Well, because he was saluting what he needed to.
I know, he did not leer. He did not give her a once over from top to bottom, like in the carriage scene where he just straight up looks her top to bottom 3 times. He finally figured out there was something below the breasts in the carriage. He's like, oh, there is a basement to this house.
You're a bitch. You're getting me going.
So, he's only been looking at the penthouse and the top floors for a few years.
And I mean, to be fair, I think Nicola was maybe not body conscious, but I think in the original carriage scene, from memory, he literally puts her nipple in his mouth. Like, it is explicit. But But I do wonder whether that would just be a little bit.
That wouldn't show
I don't know how you would
on TV.
I don't know how,
totally not, because he grabs her breast and her nipple is in between his fingers at one point, and she's looking at him doing this.
Yes,
like
like almost like looking for a third person.
When he goes to put his mouth on her there, she's like, Colin, and then he does it, and she's like, oh,
she's about to be transported to another planet,
right? And I love that scene for that reason. But yeah, like, I think that all through the seasons, you see him noticing that she is a woman. And I think that the reason he notices so much in these scenes is because they have known each other since they were, so he would have known Penelope when she was flat chested. He would have known Penelope when she was starting to get bee stings. He would have known Penelope when they were
Colin has been very aware of them. And I think in the books, it's very much like he finally gets to play with them, and he plays with them. Like, it is, he's like, oh, my dreams have finally come true.
But he never noticed that, like in the book,
but in the show,
really
we see.
Yes, in the book, he really didn't notice her for so many years, like in that sort of space. But in the book or in the show, you see that he is very aware of, and I think because at the beginning of season one, he is recently himself home from
that was
Eton.
what I said. I wish we did get a little bit more just how excited he was to finally get his playthings, you know?
Yeah. But I mean,
I
and
know that
him
they
saying
couldn't.
he's dreamt about them,
Yeah.
like I almost wish there would have been with Colin and Penn's story, and I don't know if they had a thing with Chris Van Dusen where they couldn't do this, but as much as everyone says they would have liked a flashback of
The whole
them as kids or whatever, meeting each other, whatever, I would have loved flashbacks, especially when he says things like, and I've been dreaming of these, of all the times in season one and season two where you catch him glancing. And it would put two and two for people because they do that in a lot of rom-coms where they go back, or especially like TV shows that last a long time, like Friends. And I don't know if they did it in New Girl or How I Met Your Mother, but where they go back to previous episodes and they string together edits of like flashback stuff. And that just shows you like, oh, he's always saw her this way. Like we just didn't see it until we learned it.
Has the most heartbreaking one ever where he looks back on like the moment that Robin tells him that she's not in love with him, and he's like, he flashes back to every painful thing that he's ever experienced in his life, and he's like, it was that times 1,000. And it just, even though you know all these memories, but like having them physically shown to you in that
Put
way
together,
it tore my heart out. And that is the whole purpose of having those flashbacks. And I feel like when they did the flashback of him, I know why they only went back to the scene with the candle and the cut hand. I know why they went back to that, but I feel like it would have been more effective if he's thinking through all these memories that they've shared together, all these moments of close connection.
And I would have loved it if after the Modis, and this was supposed to be side stories, but look at us.
I was like, I don't even know how we've gotten here. We've gotten through one bullet point.
We're talking about the Rokespies. But outside the Modis, if they would have done like where he says, and what about Marina? And you hear her quietly go,
yes.
And why did you do that? And I wish you'd have told me to my face. And she says, I know. If she would have said, I did, and then you just see this look change over his face, and then there's this quick flash of them outside in the hallway at that dinner party, and him go, you did. You know what I mean? Like that would have been it could have been super short, and then they could have segued into her not respecting him in a different way. Like I understand the whole whistle down thing is because I'm sorry.
We're
we got into reviewing the whole season and not like
we
totally
are literally
off.
40 minutes into this episode and we've gone through one bullet point.
Well, anyways, the sisters are very broke. They are living together, I believe. They are sharing hired hacks. They do not own their own carriage. That is why Portia specifically mentions he's got 24 curricles, because guess what she's planning on doing? She's going to gift a couple. Yeah. And his estate is as big as it is, which means the sisters can now move in.
I was about to say, I wonder whether she was planning on having the sisters move in so that she would no longer have to bankroll them as well, because she's probably really siphoning through those funds.
Yeah, because she's keeping up appearances.
But she doesn't have a man who's managing.
Well, think about this. When they first arrive at home, there are, how many did I count? 10 servants and footmen and everything on the front steps when they arrive, plus the one at the carriage. They're still getting their stuff out of the carriage.
Yeah.
So they have somewhere around 10 to 13 servants right there. Where do you see them again? You don't. You only see the two, the driver and the footman in episode 4 that picked up Penelope, right? We see Varley. We see Ray.
Right. Yeah.
That's it. I think over time, she was siphoning through money so fast, she had to start letting some of them go. Them coming back to Mayfair, it was a big deal. Look at all my servants. I just got this inheritance.
And I feel like that was the moment when Portia discovers that Penelope is Lady Whistledown, she's like, oh my God, I could have been using that money all this time.
Yeah, because she goes through money. And I think here's something else we learned too, because she blames all of their problems on Lord Featherington's gambling.
Yes.
Right?
And doesn't take accountability for her shopping.
Yeah, doesn't take accountability for her wanting to keep up appearances. Yeah. So here she is keeping up appearances and she's siphoning through the money just as fast as he did.
Because they're probably one of the newest wards, whatever you want to, like one of the newest appointed
yeah, they came into the estate.
Yes.
So their juxtaposition characters are the Mondricks, because you see the Mondricks having this estate, but they're managing it well. Yes, they're spending more money than they were before, but they're still being
within
pretty
reason.
conservative.
Yeah.
She's only getting new dresses. She's keeping the jewelry.
Yes.
She's not throwing everything out.
She's not like, oh, I've come into this place. I need to completely refurbish this to make it my own.
They're not renovating. They're not changing anything. I mean, to the point of, if you want to talk Greek or Roman, I think they have a sculpture in the one bedroom scene. Side story, I think, is this episode. They have Julius Caesar bust, which I want to get into and look at, because it was like one of the last scenes I was watching before we started or we're going to record.
I think about 8 minutes into the episode, because that's exactly where I paused with my notes as well. Okay, let's get back to the point. So we've got
we know the sisters are poor. Portia's paying for them. So as we get into the second point of my intro, I think Portia's desperation does fall from the fact that she's not just keeping up appearances with Featherington House. She's also keeping her daughters elevated in society, because married to misters and living on such meager means, like humble means, they should not have been going to balls.
Yes.
They should be saving their money, but she was paying for them to have dresses to go to balls. But I want to point this out too. I think some of their stuff is hand-me-down or refurbished dresses, because the headpiece that Philippa's wearing when they show up at the house, if you look real close, it's the same appliques from Penelope's dress from episode 1.
Interesting. That's a good catch.
Yeah, it's the same like pink and blue embroidered flowers.
It's funny,
but it's like a band of it.
Because Penelope obviously has like scrapped these dresses as like, I never want to see them ever again. And so her mum has probably taken them and repurposed those items
for her daughters to save money.
Yeah. Okay. So speaking of the girls' dresses, one of the things that I noticed when I was watching the two Featherington sisters enter into the Featherington house, rushing down the hallway, squabbling with each other, I was like, this is tickling at some nostalgic parts of my brain. Two sisters fighting in pink and green clothing. What does this remind me of? And then I realized it was from the original Cinderella movie.
Cartoon.
The cartoon version, the original, like this is not any of the remakes. So
which tells me I think they're going to do season 4 Cinderella fashioned after Ever After for real.
Yes,
because this one was very coded Disney Cinderella.
Yes, very, very Disney Cinderella. But it was quite interesting that they made that choice, knowing what season 4 would bring. Like I feel like they're like, oh, we just need to bring the biggest and best moments from each season of book to now, because we need to get the viewership to be able to continue. So I feel like they've just they have no foresight.
They were skewing from the books.
Yeah,
they were skewing from the books. They were giving Penelope the Cinderella treatment, and then when the first half dropped, even though the first half is the better, like more time was put into it, the editing's better.
What was the other girl's name? Drizella and
Anastasia.
Anastasia, thank you. But Drizella was the nastier one. From
Prudence.
Memory. Yes. So
Drusilla was Prudence.
Yes. So I was looking at the photos, and they even look like the sisters somewhat. I feel like they really tried to.
They were planning on this season, I think, being Cinderella.
Well, I feel like they really tried to play down just how beautiful Philippa actually is, and they tried to play up some of those features to make her look more like, you said Anastasia?
She's Anastasia, yeah.
Anastasia. Yeah, so I feel like, because obviously in Cinderella, we have one sister who's a little bit nicer, but she does go along with being nasty with her sister. And then you have the sister who's actually very nasty. And that's the sister that literally looks like Drizella actually looks like. If you look at the original drawings of her, it's what Prudence looks like in the series. And so the fact that they have these outfits, and it's even the same two kind of tones. It's like the darker green on top with the lighter green down below.
Lighter green on the bottom.
And then the darker pink on top with the lighter pink below for Anastasia being Philippa. To me, I do not think that it's a coincidence, especially with how Penelope is treated. She is definitely like, I mean, she's not treated like a maid in the house, but she's certainly not treated as an equal either.
And I honestly want to go back and try and remember from the movie, because I know that they're where the two sisters are practicing their accomplishment. And I know they play instruments very poorly, which I think when we see Prudence singing, isn't Philippa playing the piano and it's not the best? So
That's an
I'm thinking,
understatement. It was the most
so
painful scene ever.
so I think that
When the whole Bridgerton family
he goes,
come.
yeah. And I still want to know what Colin was doing in that scene because we all know now that men go to the dining room for their chamber
Yes.
pot. Why was he heading upstairs?
It's where my Penelope is. I do think that he knows where Penelope's room is, to be fair.
I do too. I think he gave a very decided no when Benedict said throw rocks at her window. I think he tried that at some point and got the wrong window.
Yeah.
He's like, oh crap, I got to figure out where her room is.
So Philippa is scolding Prudence for rushing as she is with child and needs to move slowly. I'm like, girl, if you moved any more slowly in your marriage, you would have gone through menopause before you fell pregnant.
I know. She's like, move more slowly.
Prudence looks could kill and she dismisses her sister's possible pregnancy despite the fact that she's been throwing up all night. Prudence says, is pregnancy sickness not associated with the morning? And I said, oh, you dear summer child, I could slap you for such a statement. Honestly.
But you can tell at that moment in time, she either is not pregnant yet or she's not far enough along to start being sick.
So
and
you
she doesn't even really get sick. She just has the other.
Typically, the vomiting begins between week 5 and 6. Nausea hit me at week 5, but it was very, very mild. It was like just like a feeling of not really wanting to eat, and then because I then got that, then the morning sickness got really nasty from week 6 onwards, but it usually eases up by week 12. But yeah, she got the other symptoms, and to be honest, I've noticed the other symptoms before I got morning sick by a long shot.
Yeah.
But when she said,
honestly, we don't see Prudence get a lot of symptoms. So I think that
no,
even though she got, she lucked out a lot. She struggled because of her mother's attention on her for so much for so long, but then she got a husband who adored her, and then when she gets pregnant, she barely has any symptoms. You know what I mean? Like
she was so mad at her sister for being pregnant, and she was like trying so hard to deny that was even a possibility because that would mean that someone else was going to. It wasn't just Penelope. It was really, I needed the attention. Mummy, look at me, look at me. Like she's very conceited.
She was struggling. She was struggling
she
so hard, and
Portia
you can tell
2.0.
She was the attention-seeking child, and I think Philippa learned that to get attention, she had to play off of Prudence because Penelope wasn't Penelope was ignored. Yeah. So if she wanted attention, she had to play off of Prudence, and that's why she got some of her mean streak.
But I think
she also had very sweet moments sometimes.
I actually wonder because, I mean, to be fair, she's always a bit of an asshole, but she is exceptionally prickly at the moment.
Or is she pretty astute? I think she's pretty astute, and she's trying to call Penelope out sometimes, like when Whistledown comes after.
No. I'm
after
talking about
Colin
Prudence.
Leaves.
I'm talking about Prudence. Like Prudence.
Oh, I'm talking about Philippa.
No, I'm saying that Prudence is just like, I'm saying Prudence is always kind of an asshole, but I'm saying I think that she actually did have pregnancy symptoms. They were just in the form of being extra prickly.
Irritable.
Extra, because at this moment, Prudence demands that Portia tells her why they were summoned as Portia is peering in the almost
and then when
closed
she finds
doors.
out, she goes, why her? Like, it's a growl.
Yes, she is furious. How dare you summon me just to rub this in my face? Like, she was already pissy about her sister being pregnant before her. Oh my God, I've got to share the attention in the number 1 spot with someone else. And now I've got this to compete with too. I've got one sister pregnant, one sister marrying a high up lord. She's like, this is the worst day of my life. Like she is exceptionally prickly.
Well, and she'd also said that Penelope wasn't even in the race because she didn't have a husband. And now here she is about like, she's got a person courting her.
Yeah.
So like, she's just mad. Like everything's going.
Yes.
And here's Penelope in season 3, because we've already said that Prudence didn't get married until between her season 4, season 5, right? Yeah. So here's Penelope courting and potentially getting married before.
I finally remembered my point. When Finchy comes and calls on Philippa in season 1, that was the point that I was going to make, and it went with this episode. I was like, I know that there was something that I had to remember for this episode. That's what it was. So when Finchy turns up and they all think, oh, another man here from Marina, she's off, whatever. And he's like, oh,
He
actually, I'm
says
here to
Miss Philippa Featherington.
Miss Philippa. And if looks could kill, she's like, but I've been
Prudence.
on the market for this many seasons. Where's my callers? How dare you come for someone, not me? Like, it's not just pointed at Penelope.
And I want to
Prudence
look like
cannot
was she
tolerate.
glaring at Philippa or
Yes.
Finch or her mother? Because
I feel like it was at Philippa.
in most Regency house, daughters were married off in order.
Yes, yes. And that's what I was explaining to Stephen the other day. I was like, this was like super, super frowned upon because he was like, oh, she's got all three daughters out at once. That must be really chaotic. And I said, actually, it was more than just chaotic. It was frowned upon.
Yes.
That was the wrong episode.
Yeah, because the Bennetts in
What
Pride
is
and
with my
Prejudice,
phone? I just turn on episode 1 and it skips straight to the sex scene between Anthony and Kate. And I know I have not watched, like, I've never skipped that point ever.
That's season 2. Yeah, that's
No,
season 2.
It's season 3, episode 1.
Oh.
Post married.
Oh, you said episode 1. I thought you said...
No, sorry. I was meant to go to season 1, but it went to season 3. Obviously, my phone is just like a smut queen because it has taken me to all the dirty parts. And I didn't even look at that, okay? That one wasn't me, okay? It wasn't even me. Which episode is it? I think it's Steven and I are on about to start 4. No, we decided 5. So it must be episode 3 that Finchy comes to call upon. Oh, no, David. I'm going to pause while I look this up. All right, so I just went back and rewatched that wee snippet to figure out exactly how it did transpire. Finchy goes to the door and says, I'm here to call, and Portia immediately cuts him off. Miss Thompson's not taking callers right now. And he says, that's okay. I'm here to call upon Miss Featherington. And I love how, like, Portia's like, what? And then even Archibald's like, you sure, mate? Like, my daughters? He's such a sterling father, isn't he? Like, he's so proud of his daughters that he's so shocked that they have, any one of them has a caller. And then obviously Philippa realizes that she's the only one who's actually had a connection with him, and she immediately knows that it's her. And then Prudence looks at Philippa like, what about me? Like, and that is the way that, I mean, if we want to talk about Eloise being a narcissist, what about Prudence? I think Prudence is 1000% the narcissist because she doesn't even know how to be happy for anyone else ever. Like, I feel like Eloise...
If we're looking at the DVM, if this season is all about, like, you know, the various levels of neurodivergency, but also we have some definite things from the, you know, DVM, the mental health diagnosis, tome, script, whatever.
I feel like...
I believe that Prudence is borderline personality disorder so much. Like, you're either her complete angel, like if you're giving her everything she wants.
I don't feel like she is. She's never kind to anyone.
She was like that with Jack, though. Like, when it was going to be that she was engaged to Jack, like at first she was like hanging on everything. I still feel like
him. I think that's still more NPD because she's
but
more.
I think she's golden child. If you do look at Portia as a narcissist, you have the golden child, which is Prudence, and then you have the scapegoat, which is Penelope, and then Philippa kind of falls in the middle.
You know the Reddit thread that's Am I the Asshole? I feel like actually so many of those thread is actually the youngest child having had issues with the oldest child being the golden child, and that golden child causing an issue and the parents backing them up so that the youngest one goes to the thread and says, well, am I at fault here? Like, my parents are saying that I am. No, dear child. No, you were just going up against the golden child. So of course everything that you were doing is wrong. But I think Prudence is freaking...
Every kid had their thing.
I think Prudence is freaking out in the scene because these are things that aren't just... Scared. Well, no, I think these are things that aren't just golden child of the week, golden child of the month things, giving an heir.
She's been golden child forever.
Well, and I think she's been golden child because she does something that the other two don't. She emulates Portia as closely as she can, because if I'm exactly like my mum, then she will respect me and she will love me and she will want me to take over as the head of this household, as if she gets to choose whose womb gets impregnated first. I think that she is freaking out because these are now two things. If Philippa is pregnant, she's going to potentially bear the next heir to the family, and everything that she has worked towards her entire life, she has probably had it in her mind her entire life. There's no boys to take over. I'm going to be the next mama. So if I emulate my mother the most closely, I'm somehow in her egotistical mind, that means that she has to bear the first heir. And so when Finchy comes in that first season and he proposes, she now has that first oh shit moment of I may not even be in this race anymore. And that was why in season 3, the first episode, you're not even part of this race. Like she's like, oh Jesus, I'm already competing with Philippa here. I don't even need to consider you a. She's like, I can't consider anyone else my competition. I need to focus on taking down my sister. And that is the way that she views it. She's been raised to compete with her siblings. They are not people that you love and you respect and you look up to. They are her competition, very much the way that Cressida puts it in season 1 and season 3. Like, these girls are not there to be your friends. They are your direct competition. And for her, it's not the competition of whoever gets the husband. She doesn't care about the husband. She cares about the title and the accolades from her mother.
Right. Okay. And I got 2 points. One, you were talking about she's the one who most emulates her mother.
Yes.
And that she feels entitled. We also know that she is the only child that her mother closely aligned with too.
Yes.
Because, and again, whoever originally created this content, I don't know who you are. I just know I saw it out in the internet universe of all the socials and whatnot. So if you ever listen to this and it was you, tag your name, down below, come to our Facebook group, Ladies Bridgerton, tell me it was, I want to call out who it was. I just am telling you it wasn't me. But somebody was pointing out, talking about costuming, that in season 2, from the moment Portia starts focusing on Prudence could marry Jack, Portia starts wearing similar coloring and matching outfits to Prudence.
Mm-hmm.
Like, as she's actively courting Prudence out there, like season 1, she didn't do it so much. She didn't really match her daughters. They were still in Featherington, like her Featherington colors.
Yeah.
Her bright colors and everything.
Yeah.
And she had a color scheme for each daughter, but she wore multiples, like more prints and things of the colors. But in season 2, when she was, Philippa was already taken, she was strictly focusing on Prudence. All her attention could be on Prudence because, of course, Penelope's the wallflower and she doesn't have to worry about Penelope ever at all. She started dressing like Prudence, and that's the only child she did that with, because even as Penelope changed her clothing, Portia did not. Portia did get a little more demure as the season went on, but she never fully aligned. She did wear blue and green to the wedding.
She aligns when it is in her best and when it benefits her.
Yes.
And I actually wonder whether in season 2 she started dressing more like Philippa. I have to go back and look, because obviously I've dug a lot into their outfits and how they look in season 3.
Fuchsia outfit.
Yes.
They're both wearing like the same fuchsia color.
But in season 2, I wonder whether it is around the time that Jack starts showing interest and flirting with Portia, and she realizes that for the first time, oh, actually, I am technically on the market again, if I so chose to be. And I wonder whether she subconsciously was like competing with her daughter. You may marry my daughter, but we will actually have our side dalliance.
Or that's a costuming choice to show that they're really one and the same. Like, the younger will marry him, but the older will actually be the partner.
Yes.
Well, that's an interesting thought. And my second point.
Oh, sorry, go.
My second point in terms of Prudence, I went through a period when I was, it officially occurred when I was 22, Samantha Warren, when my sister told me she was pregnant, I went through probably the closest thing I can say to is depression. But it just, it was a moment that hit me in the gut, because every other sibling of mine had children in order of 8, like the first child. Well, aside from my brothers, because, my brother Freddie is 28 days and my brother from 2 different first marriages. So for all those out there who are like, 28 days, what? But they had kids in order of 8. So I was the natural progression, the next person to have children. My sister didn't even want children. She was originally best friends with Carol Lee, and they talked all the time about how they never wanted to have kids. And why is it that my sister had 2 kids of her own, had 3 stepkids. Carol Lee ended up having 4 kids, and I had to fight to adopt to get one.
Yeah.
And I wanted kids. A lot of kids. When I was young and dumb and just thought with a very little kind of math brain, I was like, I want to have 12 kids and then I don't have to pay tax, because you don't even have to file taxes when you have 12 kids or something like that. Because the live near Amish and the Amish don't file taxes. He had 12 kids. So I was like, I'm going to have 12 kids and I won't have to pay taxes.
No.
Because you always heard about how bad taxes.
No.
But now I'm like, I've had a lot of work with one. I'm not having.
I love my little boy to the ends of this earth. I do not want 12 of him. I would be completely gray. I'd be in an insane asylum. I'd be rocking back and forth like 12.
But I really felt for Prudence in that moment when she was skipped, because she really feels, you can tell from the way she's acting, like she feels like she was skipped. Her parents should have known societal rules enough to know that Philippa could not be courted until she was married off.
So the way that it was supposed to work back then was the next daughter could not enter society until the first daughter was married off. As in, they should have had
betrothed. They could be betrothed.
Yes, but Prudence, at this point, Archibald should have set up a match for his daughter. You've been on the mart for 2 years. You are unmarried. I'm going to set you up because I cannot afford for your sister to not be on the mart anymore. She's getting up there in age. So he would have, just as Violet says to
Lord
Anthony,
Cowper.
if you were really wanting to be the head of this family, you would have organized a suitable match for your sister by now.
Fuck.
And you know what the funny thing is I actually think Burbrook would have been because in the books,
I don't think Lord Featherington didn't do that because he didn't know.
I think it's because he didn't have the dowry.
I think it's because of Tayshad. He couldn't find somebody that would do it.
I feel like the Burbrooks of the world, not so picky,
Burbrook had been looking at Daphne since she was 5 years old. That's
I know, so gross. But you know what I'm saying? There's the Burbrooks of the world. There's definitely men out there who really don't care and they will just take whatever.
But Prudence is a hard pill to swallow anyway. And Lord Featherington has a terrible reputation. He owes a ton of money. Everybody knows he's an open gambler. And I'm sure everyone knew that he had gambled the dowry.
Yes. Yeah. So, but I mean, yeah, still, I think that's what she's thinking. My dad should have, because she doesn't know about their financial situation. So she's probably thinking, I should have been married, that this should be me. I'm supposed to take over. I've spent my entire life emulating my mother, building up to this moment where I'm going to be the next head of this household. And now that's all been stripped away from me. And I'm not saying that those feelings are necessarily correct, but I can see where those feelings have come from. I don't really blame Prudence for some of the nastiness because it's all she's ever known. And I'm really hoping that in the season coming, season 4, that we will get to see her softening a lot more so towards Denki. I want to see her happy in her marriage.
They're not in season 4 at all.
Oh, they're not, but I know, but I'm hoping that it'll be mentioned, Prudence and Denki.
I hope we see Penelope writing letters to them.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder whether they're going to I wonder whether Penelope will purchase them a countryside estate or something for them to live in to make it make sense that they're not in the season anymore.
Yeah, so I think that there's plenty of money now because that's my whole thing. As we talked about the money, Lord Featherington gambled a lot away, but when she replenished the coffers, she went on a spending spree. So the money was running out. We know the money was running out. She was desperate. She was covering 2 households. But now you have Colin coming in who's going to take over. And I think that he and Penelope have a special kind of partnership where Kate and Anthony have a partnership, but they're still they're doing the Viscount and the Viscountess roles. She's not really handling money. She's doing household accounts, but those are smaller. He's handling the investments and the estates. But I think that Colin and Penn are going to teamwork it. And they have the whistle down money.
I think that was the point of that last episode of Penelope paying for the ball, was to show that unlike Portia, she's not going to be led in by that toxic kind of competitive culture between her sisters. She's actually, I'm done with that. I'm going to take care of them. I'm going to set them up in a way that's going to benefit them.
Yeah, and I think that we didn't see it, but we could have, because we know they're visiting the day when all the babies are there.
Yes.
It's kind of pretty obvious who's living there and who's visiting.
Yes.
So I think that we are going to find that they get set up with their own home somewhere. My guess is going to be the country. I think it's going to be the country, right?
I think so.
And
I feel like even though he's got hay fever, I feel like Finchy will excel in the country.
well, he said it's not hay fever, it's a nervous habit.
Anxiety, yeah.
Yeah.
But
So
no,
I think they're going to be set up somewhere else.
He brings daisies and he says, "Oh, sorry,"
Yeah,
like he's sneezing and he's saying it's the daisies.
But he just met her. I don't think he wanted her to know that it was a nervous thing. And now that they're married is when he told her. He told her, no, I was nervous, but I met you, my little plum drop, my little sugar plum. And
the funniest thing,
I don't remember what he calls her, but he bops her on the nose, kisses her on the nose, and it's so adorable. They're so adorable in season 3. I love them very much.
The funniest thing is, as I said to Patty off air before, is my husband has been rewatching season 1 with me because we did season 3 initially, and then he's like, all right, well, I want to see the rest of it. I want to understand the backstory. So he's gone back and watched season 1 with me. And he has immediately picked up on the fact that he is, like, if he were to be any character, he is Finchy. He's the hay fever, the love of cheese, the sort of dorky but absolutely lovable golden retriever energy is Stephen. The I love my wife, like I worship, my wife. We have a great relationship. It's all Stephen. And so I think he's realized, and he's like, that's me. And I'm like, but that's funny because that's
awesome.
I said that's so funny because that's our favorite. I'm like, if we could have any actor on our show, like guest on our show.
I manifest. He's the first guy I want on our podcast. Yes. I want Lauren McDonald so bad.
Yes.
So
give
bad.
Us Lauren. He is our king. But let's get back to my bullet points to get through. So we're at the point where Prudence was demanding why they were summoned. They all peer through this crack in the door, which it was really pushing the bounds of propriety to her. Like, were they actually supposed to? Because when she's engaged, well, about to be engaged to Lord Dibling, or being courted by Lord Dibling, Portia is out of the room with just a crack in the door. When it is
I have
Colin,
a theory.
What do you think that she was trying to see if he would do anything untoward so that she could entrap him into that marriage?
Sort of. I think she was giving them the opportunity to do things because even if Penelope, frisked around early with Lord Dibling, it would not take away Prudence's or Philippa's chance at having the heir because he already has a title. So she was a little bit more
she was hedging her bets.
She was hedging her bets, and she wanted that moment with the sisters alone where she could rub it in their faces because she's been making fun of them, even though she procured these men for her children, aside from Finchy, but she's been pressing on them that they chose misters. They chose and that's how you know a narcissistic parent too, because when it benefits them, they're the ones that procured these gentlemen for you. They're the ones that got these husbands for you. But when it doesn't benefit her, it's like, you chose them.
Like season 1.
Why would you want to come eat food at my house? You chose them. You married women.
Yeah. Season 1, Portia was all for Finchy. She's like, he isn't a lord, but he is good enough, and then all of a sudden
good enough for Philippa. Would he have been good enough for Prudence?
Yeah. And so it was kind of surprising that she went for another untitled.
Because she ruined Prudence.
Yes. So Dibling actually spies the girls peering through the door, and all 3 pull back at once. It's kind of like comedic, like Parent Trap, like, oh no, you've caught us spying. Oh, let's look away. But he actually looks pissed at it. He looks annoyed at the intrusion.
Oh, he's very annoyed.
Yes.
And here's my juxtaposition.
Because he doesn't like being gawked at in society.
Yeah. Well, and not just that, like he's clocked. I think he's
Chatty Daddy. Sorry. Stephanie's comment just popped up on my phone. She's like, I can't believe you guys referenced Chatty Daddy. Yeah.
Chatty Daddy. But so she's giving Dibling the opportunity to taste test ahead of time. We'll put it like that.
Yeah.
And giving him alone time. One, also because I don't think she truly sees him as a sexual being, and she knows there's no sexual tension, and she knows there's no, it doesn't feel romantic at all, this courtship. But I also think it's not a big deal to her because it's not going to affect her golden child from possibly becoming, because remember, she wanted to be able to manipulate whomever was in control. She wanted to maintain control. So she wanted it to be Prudence.
As much as Prudence thinks that she is the most like her mother, she emulates the worst qualities of her mother, but
Yeah.
Penelope actually
But
has the
Penelope has the
best
best qualities.
qualities of her mother, that she is
Yeah.
incredibly intelligent. She is manipulative when she needs to be. She's conniving when she needs to be. When she thinks that like the core of who she is being threatened, that is when that kind of Featherington side in her
She's a
does really come
problem
out.
solver. Let's give it a positive spin
Yeah.
because it's a positive trait. She is a
Yes.
problem solver, and Portia
She's a
is a problem
survivor.
solver.
She's a
Portia is a
survivor.
problem. Yes, Portia is a problem solver, but she's singularly we'll say she's allistic. She's neurotypical.
It is
She can
only when
only
it
see
suits
the
her.
one path, but Penelope comes off a little more neurospicy where she can see multiple paths to get somewhere.
Yeah.
And then my point too, the reason she is all up in Colin and Penelope's business is because Colin is a third son. Colin is not a lord. And she feels the tension with them. She feels the
Yes.
sexual tension. She knows he loves her. So she knows if she gives them even an inch, she will be, and the Bridgertons are prolific.
Yes.
She is purposely gatekeeping so that her golden child daughter that she can manipulate, if she can manipulate Prudence. So she wants Prudence to have the heir. She doesn't want Penelope to have the heir because she's never been able to control Penelope.
Yes, that is
and
all
now you're
making
gonna,
sense.
And now you're going to add Colin, who always seemed to be, mild-mannered, whatever. And then he stands up to her and she's like,
but Colin is also the one who has foiled her plan. So she knows that he is not stupid and he's not going to work outside of the bounds of society.
And if they have the heir, he'll see the books. If they have the heir, he'll see the books.
And not just
know
that,
she's involved.
but he works within the bounds of society. He knows that he is a rule keeper when it comes to this kind of thing. And he is kind and he is Bridgerton and he is honorable.
Is he though? Is he though?
When it comes to this kind of thing, he would never ever scam society for his own. He would
never
benefit.
Scheme. No,
never ever.
No.
So that's what I'm saying. Like she knows. Oh, if I let.
So she's Colin blocking because she does not want them to have the heir.
Yes.
And the only reason she's super happy in the end is because Penelope figures out the plan she figures out so that Portia doesn't get found out. But we still don't know that Colin knows. And I think that's going to be a season thing.
I think so as well, actually. So Philippa at first looks really happy for her sister until Prudence says, "Why her?
Why her?"
Philippa responds, "She must have blackmailed him." And then Prudence says, "Or trapped him in a closet." And it's like, really?
Or an orangery purchase.
Or maybe she used a potion. Or maybe she used a potion. She says, maybe she's a witch. Maybe she used a potion. And I said, isn't it ironic that Philippa married Finchy under false pretenses of having a dowry, though that was not her fault, and Prudence did in fact try to blackmail someone into marriage, and yet they are making a judgment on their sister as if the only way that their family know how to get what they want is through nefarious means. Isn't that ironic that they cannot fathom that anyone actually courted through the bounds of society and got what they wanted?
Would want to marry into their family.
Because that's not the way that Featheringtons do things. We only do things the shady way, the outskirts of society, the breaking the rules, the bending of rules, whatever. They don't know anything but grey. Nothing is black and white with them. It's all in the grey zone.
Well, and it's important to remember, when you're looking at human beings as human beings, you have to look at their upbringing and look at what they were taught was. And first of all, listeners, no dogs were harmed in the making of this podcast. My dog is protesting that he is not allowed to be in this room with me because he knows I brought food in here. I brought snacks. That is the only reason he wants in my room.
He's like, but I'm attention queen. I deserve snacks, Mommy.
He is not hurt. He is trying to tell me he's in charge. He is not. He is fine. He's been out to the bathroom. He has food. He has water. He is perfectly. I even have doggy daycare.
He's just
TV on.
He's being a drama queen.
He is.
He's letting his feelings be known.
But yes, I think it's ironic that they both say the thing for how they got their man. But we have to remember that people are formed in their childhood by how they're brought up.
Yes.
And these kids are brought up in chaos. These kids were brought up by a narcissistic parent and a very absent parent, very neglectful parent, and they only know what they know. And they know society, though. They all understand that where their family stands in society, and they cannot believe that this sort of man would want to marry and align into their family.
Yeah.
And they both were raised with Penelope as the scapegoat. So they have no idea why anyone. And if you look at how they both greet him, you can see how the way they greet Debling says a lot about their thinking, because Prudence is very antagonistic, standing there like looking him up and down and openly judging.
Yes.
Whereas Philippa does a curtsy and never raises her head. She's looking up at him from the tops of her eyes, and her chin is still down.
She wanted to be happy for her sister, and she was, until she realized, oh, my sister is going to see that weakness.
And she showed him an immense amount of respect in that moment by keeping her chin down and her eyes really like drawn down, but looking up at him. That is a stance for showing deference to his title.
Yes.
As well as think about the fact that at the wedding breakfast, everybody else curtsies the queen. Philippa does not. She's like, how dare you interrupt my sister's wedding? And she just looks like, I'm not curtsying. Call me out. Yeah. Call me out.
Yeah. So Portia explains that it was with the help of Colin Bridgerton, then follows up with, many people would do much worse to be connected to with the Bridgertons. I'm like, that's rather an ironic statement, considering that she, in fact, has done much worse to be connected with them.
This conversation, it's hypocrite. It's hypocrite thrice.
Oh my God.
They're thrice the hypocrites. It's like, I'm going to make a hypocritical statement. No, I'm now going to make a hypocritical statement. Oh, hold my beer. I'm going to make a hypocritical statement.
Funny how she never actually acknowledges her own faults. She just completely skirts over them and pretends that they never existed. Oh, I don't know any personality traits that act like that.
And no offense, if she would have been watching at all, if she would have noticed her daughter at all, she would have noticed that her daughter started talking to Debling without Colin Bridgerton's help.
Yes.
Like, she would have protected her daughter, because again, we're going to call a spade, and I think he's a covert narc. But she would have been more protective of his daughter. She would have been, if she would have not had the dollar signs in her eyes like an old Looney Tunes cartoon, it would have never gotten as far as it got. Because look at Violet. Violet clocks her kids, and Violet kind of helps maneuver, manipulate, meddle, whatever M word you want to use. The meddling, manipulative, maneuvering mamas.
Yes.
Trying to help her children find love, whereas Portia ignores her.
Yeah.
And then tries to push her towards the first man that shows any interest, but his interest is only in what Penelope can do for him, not for Penelope herself.
Yeah. It's those girls who find a man to have the wedding, not find the husband. You know, they're so focused on wedding, babies, not love of my life. All those things fall into place because I have the right person. But speaking of pushing into the room, this is where Portia then pushes the girls into the room to be introduced to Lord Debling. It's like all three girls knew the immediate shift in power as soon as it happened. This was Portia's punishment to them. She was silently berating them for their failings and capturing a well-to-do husband, and essentially saying that Penelope is the favorite now because at least she got a titled husband, or you know, someone calling upon her at least.
But I find this funny because so Prudence kind of looks at him, gives him a once over, and she can't take her eyes off Penelope.
And Penelope's like living her moment.
Penelope is like, hi. She says it all slow, like, hi. Like, but she's rubbing it in.
Oh, she is living her best life. And I'm actually really glad that she got this moment, because like those girls needed a little bit of putting in their place. Like, their sisters are they've just been out in the hallway saying that she's a witch creating love potions. Excuse me, Mrs. So desperate to take potions to have an error. Like, who's the witches now, hey?
Well, and if you hear that whole sentence, she says, or maybe she drank a potion like Varley gave us. Like, she says it like, maybe because Varley's in the house, maybe Varley gave her a potion, like a love potion. Like, they believe Varley's a witch now, is how I took that. Like, it's not that Penn is the witch, it's that Varley is. 1 minute.
I'm just gonna pause. Okay. So I feel like we have done the deepest of dives into the Featherington family in this episode. I knew with my notes, I was like, it doesn't look that many notes, but I knew how much backstory we had to kind of get through, kind of looking at season 1 courting a little bit in season 2, season 3, the Jack, the Finch, the Dinky, we had so much to uncover that I was like, I know that we weren't going to get into Bridgerton House
Well, and
or
a lot plays in this scene. I mean, this is a very
yes,
small scene, but there's so much information to be gathered. Again, words matter. The fact
yeah,
that each person in that hallway mentions that she did something that they actually did.
yes,
Projection
yes.
much? I mean, come on.
And
Like they don't understand being yourself and people actually liking you for who you are, although he doesn't. Colin does, but he likes her for attributes she does have that'll be beneficial to him for sure. And she didn't have to do anything special. She just
had to be herself.
had to be desperate. Like
Yeah.
he thought she was desperate.
Yeah.
He thought she would be easy. And I don't mean easy as in I can take her to a closet. I mean easy as in I won't have to put in any work in.
Yeah. He thought she was going to be the asparagus fern. Did you see someone commented about the asparagus fern in the Bridgerton page today? And I'm like, excuse me, I literally have an entire Bridgerton episode, like half focusing on the asparagus fern. Don't even try to pretend like this is a
Did
new
you
theory.
look and see if they're in our group? Like
I didn't actually, but they said that they're a plant enthusiast, and I don't think that they are. I don't think they are part of our group
and
because
I
they
think,
said
and I'm
they
giving
said
you
that
homework. Like before we
they said that the asparagus fern was a love plant, and do we think that he was offering love? And I was like,
it is not a love plant. What are you talking about? And I think you need to use your little app for the flowers and check see if what flowers you can identify at Lady Tilly's.
No, I was going to do that actually. I don't use an app.
I'm giving you that as homework because I literally can't do it. Like there's one flower I recognize, but I thought it was kind of orchid, but it's not. There's definitely some roses in there.
Mm-hmm. But different color roses have different symbolism as well.
Different.
So
yes,
yeah.
there's orange roses for sure.
Yeah.
And Benedict's bouquet is just as big as all the other ones, and his has roses,
maybe even bigger.
White. It's not. It's average for the ones.
Stop it. All right.
For Tilly, it's average.
We're not looking. We're just focusing on the Featheringtons.
Well, we're saying on the next episode of Ladies Bridgerton podcast.
What I was going to say is, thank you to our listeners who really have encouraged us to be our geeky deep diving selves. Because originally, when we started this podcast, I remember thinking, "Oh no, we've got to keep it."
Nobody's going to want to know that. Nobody's going to care.
Yeah, and I almost wish that we could go back and redo half of our first episodes because I was so paranoid about not encroaching on people's time and oh no, people aren't going to want to listen to that, and oh, it's too long, it's too in detail, people don't want those details, that I really cut off some of what could have been really, really good content because I was so focused on that. But the longer episodes we put out, people are like, yes, give me, they are the carriage scene. They're like, give me
everything tonight.
Yeah. So I just wanted to give a shout out to our listeners. Thank you so much for letting us be our wafting tangent queen selves, because we literally just turned a 2-minute scene in one episode. Yeah, it's such a short scene, and we literally have turned this into an hour and a half episode.
Right. But there's a lot there, and I think
there was,
like the more analytical you get with something, and that's why storytelling is so great, especially in visual media. Yes. Because every department does their thing. Every department puts in the hard yards to tell the story.
Yeah.
From jewelry to
look what I found in the costumes. The costumes were Cinderella story. Yes. That was telling, not Cinderella story, Cinderella story. Like that is telling us this is the vibe of the family, and then looking at Portia's outfits, looking at Penelope's, looking at the fern that was brought to her in the scene.
And I noticed in this scene too, mostly Prudence's necklace, there's no gemstone. It's all like pretty like court maybe, or it really kind of looks like it wouldn't be, because that's the jewelry that the Southwest Native American a lot. Silver and the blue.
I know what you're talking about, and I'm looking at the photo.
I hate when my brain doesn't word I want.
It's that turquoisey. Is it? No, it's not turquoise.
It's not turquoise. Yeah, it's turquoise. Well, yeah, it's turquoise.
Yeah.
But it's a turquoise where it's more like it's not a gem so much as it's just a like it's polished. It's a
But I mean,
polished pretty rock,
even looking
basically.
like if we're looking at the photo right now of Prudence and Philippa, like Prudence's hair is done up, part of it's down in the back, but it's all away from her face, and she's got this very structured kind of coat on.
If you're looking at it, look at Philippa's. Look at her headpiece
like it
around the
embodies.
back of her head.
Yeah, it embodies power though. Whereas when you look at Philippa, the outfit looks like it's wearing her. Like it doesn't even really look like it truly fits her. But what I'm saying more so is it's very soft, it's very gentle, it's very feminine, and she's never ever trying to embody her mother. She's just happy being herself. You even just the clothing choices that they have made for this episode tell us so much about these characters. Like she puts the one rose there to be like, I'm a soft little rose. No, you are thorns, girl. You are thorns.
For real.
Yes. But for today, gentle listeners, we will leave it there and continue on next week's episode where I have uncovered some new things. So if you go through episode 4 and you're watching from the start, let's see if anyone else can pick up before we release this episode what we could potentially be hinting at. If you have anything in particular you would like us to cover or any Bridgerton knowledge you would like to share, please head to our Facebook page, The Ladies Bridgerton. And if you're enjoying our podcast, please remember to click follow on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you are listening. Additionally, we are now available on Patreon, also where you can go and get behind the scenes content. If you go to our Ladies Bridgerton Facebook page or our YouTube channel, you will see a link to that Patreon.
And yes, and if there's anything you would like us to discuss, that you want us to specifically discuss on the pod and not necessarily in one of our chats, we have a new email. It's the ladiesbridgertonpod@gmail.com. You can submit questions. So, if you want to ask a question, or specifically have us discuss XYZ, we'll bring it up on the pod. But we also have a new email where we're trying to grow, guys. And on YouTube, we have an ask. We would love to be able to do lives and at some point, and to really get to that, to be able to do that in the right way for you guys. We need to get to 500 subscribers. Please share us on YouTube.
Yeah,
So
even
that
if you don't
people...
use YouTube regularly, even if you could just go and click subscribe, it would really mean a lot to us.
We would love it, because we want to include that in our new content where we do lives on YouTube. We're thinking about starting a Bridgerton book club.
Yes.
What are some other? I mean, these are ideas in the making, folks. We're also thinking of doing episode specific discussion one-offs on Patreon. These are some ideas we have coming up. But to really get to the level where we can do things properly, we're really trying to grow our other spaces. So it would really help us out if you go and subscribe yourself, share us from YouTube. The more you share, the more it gets, how algorithms
put out into
work.
Algorithm.
Yeah. Just we want you to put us out in the universe so that other people find us.
Yes.
We want to grow our community.
Once again,
thank you for listening to the musings, the delusions, the delirium of two mad women.
yours truly, Tosh the Kiwi.
And Lady Patty.